We are those guys. You see these guys over there? Well, don't forget about those guys. I'm Alex Hardy, joined as always Nick Ferguson. Week 15 is in in totality. It's wrapped up. We're coming off a Steelers 28-15 victory over the Miami Dolphins on Monday night, looking ahead to an exciting week number 16. But first, Nick Ferguson, what's going on, my man?
Nothing, man. Whoa, man, that was a tough one. Your Patriots took on the chin, but
Oh,
we'll get it.
you want to
We'll
get to
get
that
into
right
that
away?
later. Yes, let's get to it right away. Why
Right out
wait?
the gate.
What?
Okay, so
Yes,
for three
yes.
quarters, they've got themselves, a bit of a lead here, 21-0. Then it
Yeah.
becomes 24-7,
Mm-hmm.
and the wheels just kind of come off. A 21-point deficit. The Buffalo Bills come back on. Josh Allen playing a little hero ball. This running game led by James Cook doing a lot of the work. But the Patriots offense, frankly, a little too cute here. And meanwhile, that linebacker play, a little all over the place. They kind of made some changes following that loss. But Nick, the Denver Broncos were in the driver's seat for the AFC because of the Vegas Raiders of all teams. But now, instead of clinching the AFC East, Buffalo is a game back, and New England is in control unless they run into trouble with the Baltimore Ravens on Sunday night. Is this a crisis mode for New England after this 35-31 loss to Buffalo, breaking
Yes,
that 10-game win streak?
yes, it is because the wheels on the bus go round and round, and those wheels are going round and round for the Buffalo Bills, and it's kind of amazing to see that the
They circle
Patriots.
it's a wagon for them, not a bus. They circle the wagons.
Well, I couldn't say the wagon, so I decided to select the bus, right? Either way, those wheels on the bus are moving round and round as Josh Allen was able to move around and round on
Hmm.
the New England Patriots defense. And it happened, it kind of gassed me up, right? So I saw the early score and I was like, oh, then they scored again. And I was like, this is kind of the end and epic collapse of the Buffalo Bills. And every single time I look at the game, Josh Allen was making the play. He was coming back. And someone said to me at the game, Josh Allen plays his best ball when he is trailing, and that's when he is the most dangerous. I said, well, like a possum being backed
Hmm.
into a corner. They said, damn right, like a possum being backed into a corner. And that's exactly what he did to Mike Vrabel and your beloved Patriots. And so much so, I don't know if you saw the video, and if you didn't, I'll send it to you. Well, Coach Vrabel was talking a little after the game, maybe might have been that Monday on a local Patriot show,
Oh, I know
and
where
he
you're going with this.
he said, you know what? For a team that leads the league in holding penalties, it's surprising that they didn't have one single holding penalty in the game. And I found that very interesting because that goes totally against the Patriots' way, does it not?
Well, it also wasn't true because there was a holding penalty that overturned a Josh Allen rushing TD, but James Cook took it in 2 plays later. But I digress. Mike Vrabel was kind of in his feelings, and the officiating has been god awful. I think that's been pretty consistent. It went both ways, but especially against the Patriots. But I will just put the disclaimer out there. You do not put yourself in a position to lose a football game when you're up 3 touchdowns. You do not put yourself in a position where one bad call, 2 bad calls, cost you a game. That's on you. But that being said, the PI call that was called on Marcus Jones when Khalil Shakir doesn't even catch a football, they call it a catch and a PI, was just absolutely absurd. The Patriots were still leading at that point, but it set up the second Bills touchdown. And at that moment, I said, the game is lost right there. I mean, because I don't know the perspective that you do, Nick, but if you are a defense that goes out and makes the play and the officials turn it over for the Buffalo Bills, you're sort of despondent. It's like, what else am I supposed to do on a play where I make the interception? Yes, there was some contact leading into the play, but they're not going to call it. And then meanwhile, Matt Collins again, you've got two guys, him and Trey White, fighting for a ball. Mac Hollins, who, by the way, can show his strength by walking around in barefoot and no shirt in the snow, but somehow can't use his 6'3", 6'4" frame to extend his arms and go catch a football in a 50-50 situation. I mean, there's a lot of contact there where there was no penalty for Trey White, and they count the interception as well. So I think those are two critical moments by the officiating, but it certainly didn't cost New England the game because Buffalo had one first down in the first two drives. I think they punted on all but one of their drives in the first half, and they score 5 touchdowns in the second, or 4 touchdowns in the second half. So I think there's a lot of fault to go around, but are the wheels falling off? I don't think so. You can't erase a 10-game winning streak, including that win in Buffalo. They were the better team for 3 quarters, and they get a Baltimore Ravens team coming up next that has just really not been themselves. That huge victory over Cincinnati we'll get to, but this Ravens team is far from what we've come to expect in a Lamar Jackson-led outfit. And it's just strange because the 3 teams we talked about, Buffalo, New England, we could turn the page to Baltimore, Nick. I mean, this AFC continues to be wide open, especially with the Chiefs being mathematically eliminated from the postseason for the first time in nearly a decade. I mean, we wrote them off 2 weeks ago, but Patrick Mahomes tearing his ACL, this AFC is wide open. So New England's still in the driver's seat for the East. I had a Victory adult beverage that I was ready to open when they clinched the division. It went back in the refrigerator, Nick. So where do you want to go next in the AFC? Maybe that is your Denver Broncos, who are in the driver's seat, taking care of their business against the Green Bay Packers, because mentioned Mahomes, but I think even a bigger loss was Micah Parsons for the Packers.
Yeah, that was a huge loss, man. And I saw that sitting in the stadium. And obviously I knew it right away as a guy that had 2 knee surgeries. And it was quite unfortunate because, I mean, he was the strength of their defense, especially on Sunday, even though they didn't have a lot of sacks. When you look at the amount of pressures and forcing Bo Nix to get the ball out of his hands, they did just that. And it was kind of sad and unfortunate. I wanted to see how far the Packers would actually go with Micah Parsons on his team. Now they have to wait 9 months, just as though the Kansas City Chiefs have to wait 9 months to see what's going to happen with Patrick Mahomes. But it was a great game all along. And you know what it's like, man? It was like watching, Rocky Balboa and that Clubber Lang in Rocky 3. That's what it seemed like. Got both guys standing in the middle of the ring, and they shot from shot, because that's exactly what it was. And I think it might have been a third quarter where the Packers had a 23-14 lead, and it seemed as though they were right on the verge of blowing the game wide open. Then all of a sudden there was that throw to Christian Watson that was picked off. And I'm thinking, as I'm watching it and saying, if Jordan Love was to throw the ball a little to the right and lead Christian Watson, he's going to make that catch, even though you have the defensive player of the year, the reigning defensive player of the year in coverage. But when you're playing man coverage and the guy's running away from you and you don't have any safety help, that is always a guaranteed completion. But it was a hell of a game. It was a game that both teams really needed, but the Broncos really needed it the most to really prove to people that, you know what, they are for real. And the only way you do that, Alex, to do it against that team starts the conversation. Now to do it again in back-to-back weeks against the Jacksonville Jaguars, that's something that they're going to have to do.
Yeah, no, like we talked about going in, that it was a sign of disrespect that the Broncos were a home dog against this Green Bay Packers team, and they just go out, they build that early lead that you mentioned, and they held Green Bay off. Like Jordan Love getting picked off and Christian Watson getting hurt, you think, oh, it can't get any worse because Watson sort of emerged as their top receiver, and then you lose Micah Parsons. Although clearly the best receiver on the Green Bay Packers now is Josh Jacobs. The way that he toe-tapped and caught that in the corner of the end zone was
that was amazing.
Just sick. Just a special player, and the kind of offensive weapon that helps you grind out games in the postseason. We just don't know with Green Bay now, because that was a game that they needed to have. Denver as well. They're the ones that secure it. And look, Denver has been absolutely dominant, and they have a great test, as you mentioned, against Jacksonville. Plus, they get the Chargers in the last week of the season. I mean, maybe with the division on the line. But I am just shocked, absolutely shocked, that the Green Bay Packers pushed their chips in, got one of the best defensive players in the National Football League, and their investment with 2 first-round picks kind of goes belly up because Parsons is done for the rest of the year. Same thing happened in the Indianapolis Colts. They pushed their chips in for Sauce Gardner. He gets hurt. Daniel Jones breaks a bone in his leg and then tears his Achilles. It is just, these teams are being punished for going all in and sacrificing draft capital, not being able to pick a first-round player until 2028, and they're not at full strength. So it's just, again, a wide open AFC, which, kind of has to fill out with an AFC North team. Unfortunately, somebody has to win it. And unfortunately, for Ravens and Bengals and Browns fans, the Steelers have been the best team. I'm not going to say that that their last 2 wins all of a sudden propel them into a perennial playoff or Super Bowl caliber team. I mean, they did beat the Miami Dolphins in the cold, and they did get the Ravens the week before. But it's like Tua is 0-6 now when it is sub 40 degrees.
Yeah.
And Pittsburgh hasn't lost a game on Monday night since 1993. I think they're like 25-0 on Monday night. So I'm not surprised, but I'm glad that Aaron Rodgers and this team took care of their business and they're winning the games that they are supposed to win, because this is something that they did not do earlier this year with losses to Cincinnati. Frankly, like all their losses this year outside of Cincinnati have been to teams that are looking at playoff positioning right now.
But here's the great thing about the Pittsburgh Steelers is that they're a mainstay in the playoffs. Now, Steelers fans don't like that, and neither does James Harrison and Big Ben Roethlisberger.
No, but it's like, is it empty calories that Tomlin will get to above 500 and they flame out of the playoffs again?
Well, I mean, that's not a guarantee. Anything can happen, and what we've seen is the Pittsburgh Steelers surge in the past 2 weeks, and they continue to surge at the right time. Remember, it's like, we look at timing and we always say timing is everything. And, there could be more help on the way because early on in the season, the Pittsburgh Steelers didn't really have any receiver help. I mean, they signed, DK Metcalf, then it was MVS, and then it was Adam Thielen, right? A bunch of veteran wide receivers. And oh, by the way, the Jets just let Alan Lazard go.
That's right. The next guy to join Rodgers. So
I'm thinking, right, getting the band back together and what one hell of a run it would actually make, because now instead of having inexperienced receivers, you will now have all receivers, right, that have some kind of experience with Aaron Rodgers, but more importantly, these guys now have experience in the playoffs. And could the Pittsburgh Steelers be warming up at the right time to make a run? Now, I know you don't have TJ Watts. That's going to be an issue defensively. But if you can now score points and turn it into somewhat of a foot race in a track meet, now that's the type of game that Aaron Rodgers loves. And he has one hell of a coach who is a mainstay once again in the playoffs. So I kind of like the Steelers right now.
Like an uber efficient performance. I mean, Rodgers was awesome. He was sick. And Kenneth Gainwell actually provided a more consistent ground game than Jaylen Warren has, who is more of a home run or strikeout type of runner, going, east-west as opposed to north-south. DK Metcalf imposing his will and ragdolling Minkah Fitzpatrick on the way to the end zone. That's how Pittsburgh drew it up on paper this offseason. We just never really saw it come to fruition. And when the calendar turns to December, this is big boy football and has been a thorn in Miami's side. And they obviously have some reeling to do, the way that they had rallied over the last month or so, playing quality football, 4 straight wins. They beat Buffalo. They beat the Saints and the Jets as well, but they were a team that was getting stomped on by Cleveland and Carolina. Baltimore, they lose by 3 touchdowns, and Mike McDaniel sort of took control. They put up 30 points a couple of times, and the wheels might be coming off, even though they've got a couple of home games. That matchup with the Buccaneers, Florida on Florida, before week 17. Maybe they could play spoiler to New England, who is trying to make sure that they keep Buffalo off their back. So I think that they can relish with the idea of playing a spoiler. They certainly can't do it as well as we've seen New Orleans do it, knocking off their NFC South division rivals in back-to-back weeks. But if they can keep Tua upright, which kudos to the Steelers for sacking him 4 times without TJ Watt, I'm hoping that Jalen Waddle and especially Devon Achane can be enough for that offense to carry that soft defense for the last couple of weeks. Meanwhile, Nick, I think like with the AFC, it begins with Denver. You have New England. You have Buffalo. You have the AFC North 2 teams in there. Rounding out the rest of it, though, like Houston absolutely surging. I mean, 40-20 against Arizona, but it didn't look that close. It never did at any point. CJ Stroud and that offense finally opening things up, that defense doing what it does, getting after Jacoby Brissett, who put up some garbage time stats down the stretch. But look, as a Patriots fan, if the Patriots started today, they would draw Houston at home. That may be the one matchup I'm most afraid of.
Well, it seems as though you're not the only person that seems to be afraid of the Houston Texans and what they could potentially bring. And just think, I mean, a couple of weeks ago, CJ Stroud was out. Davis Mills was a quarterback. And it would seem as though all is lost. The Texans were not going to make the playoffs, but now they've emerged as being one of the scariest teams in the AFC, dare I say, the entire NFL. And it all starts, try this out, Facades, on the defensive side of the ball, because defense still wins championships. And DeMeco Ryans has done a great job building out that defense from the front of that defensive line, second level and back in the secondary. That unit plays great. And as long as CJ Stroud and the offense can kind of move the ball and they don't turn it over and they can run it decently, and what I mean by decently, if they can muster at least 120 yards on the ground, then, hey, listen, everything is open and everything is fair. And that's not 120 yards on the ground by one running back. That they can do that as a collective and create some balance. So that is a very scary team because they are surging. And if you were to twist my arm and compare, okay, the Pittsburgh Steelers to the Houston Texans and say, well, out of those 2 teams, which team would I think has the ability to advance and maybe even advance to the AFC Championship, I would have to lean heavily on the Texans over the Steelers.
That's fair. And meanwhile, a potential Steelers-Chargers matchup has Saturday afternoon written all over it for Wild Card Weekend. But I digress. The NFC had its fair share of matchups as well that we liked. Do you want to hit on a couple of them before we look ahead to what'll be the best game, that Rams Seahawks battle on Thursday night later this week? Why don't we do the Rams then? 41-34 over the Detroit Lions. Is this establishing the cream of the crop in the NFC here, or is there anything beyond the scoreboard that you take away when the Rams trying to keep Detroit out of the playoffs?
Well, I'm going to say this, man. When you look at the Rams, they look like a Super Bowl team, a team that's ready to go to Super Bowl. Now, here's the tough part of it is that they're starting to get banged up, right? Devontae Adams with that hamstring injury, how long that's going to keep him out, if at all. And then if he decides to play and sit out a week, I mean, could he possibly strain the hamstring again? So this is a team that has a lot of talent. They have a lot of depth, but they don't have a lot of quality depth. And that's the problem for the Rams and where they were running into somewhat of an issue. And they have a guy who I think, should be the MVP of 2025 if things continue to kind of elevate and that trajectory is in the same way in Matthew Stafford. And what's wild, Alex, is at the beginning of the season, this is a guy that didn't participate a lot in training camp because he had a back issue. But now you look at what he's able to do. So the Rams are playing great football, and this is going to be a huge test for both teams, both the Rams and the Seahawks.
Well, if it wasn't a quick turnaround, Sunday to Thursday, I have a lot more optimism for Davante Adams. Didn't practice Tuesday. He has to have some level of participation tomorrow, Wednesday, for there to be any hope of him playing. Although the news out of Southern California here, where I am, Nick, the Immortal Chamber, the very machine, the traveling RV that kept Matthew Stafford alive over the offseason, has returned to Rams Park in hopes of maybe Davante Adams getting a brand new leg in order to make that quick turnaround on Thursday. I'm just saying, look, Matthew Stafford needed an epidural this offseason, and he's playing at an MVP level. There's clearly something going on inside of that medical bus.
Well,
look,
I'll say this. Captain America, they put him in some kind of a chamber and it helped him out, him and Bucky Barnes. Maybe they could do the same for these guys, right?
It's that simple. Can you save the world or can you beat the Seattle Seahawks on Thursday? Both are very, very strong propositions to do. Does that give that much of an advantage to Seattle, knowing that Davante Adams is banged up?
Yeah, of course. Anytime a team is missing one of their more elite players, it definitely gives you an advantage because that's the guy that you don't have to worry about. Now, with that being said, it only means that you have to worry about more weapons on the Rams squad. And, you got Puka Nacua, you got Blake Corum, Kyron Williams. So there's enough weapons in that arsenal for Sean McVay and the Rams to worry about, but not having a guy like Davante Adams, you can lean one way and kind of double Puka Nacua. And for me, this is going to be an interesting matchup, right? So interesting because if I'm not mistaken, I think, the Rams won the first meeting, right? And they won it handily. So now if you're the Seattle Seahawks, you want a little get back. And there's nothing wrong, I guess, in this case, kicking a team while they're down. Hey, why not?
The Seahawks have won 10 of their last 11. The one loss, you mentioned it, the LA Rams, it was a 21-19 game, if I remember correctly. They did it despite the defense doing their job. I think Stafford was picked off 4 times. It came down to a long field goal that Seattle didn't make, but the Rams just edging them out. So these are two teams that know each other well, that have saved their best football for each other. And Seattle had LA's number back then. I will say the Rams line is healthier. I do think they have the advantage over Seattle, even though they are traveling up to the Emerald City. The weather has actually been really nice in Seattle as of late. Been keeping in touch with friends of mine up there. Not a lot of rain, but it isn't like playing at SoFi Stadium. Rounding out the rest of the NFC, or do you want to detour and talk about how the Seattle Seahawks just barely beat your guy, Phillip Rivers? 44 years old, put the Colts ahead late in that game, but the Seahawks just getting that final field goal to take the victory.
Well, you know what? How disappointing, even in a victory, that you must be when you have a 44-year-old quarterback.
I don't know. Right?
Now, listen. Now, Mike McDonald's defense, they did their job. They did their job. Now, when it comes to Sam Darnold and the offense, they really didn't do it, right? But they will tell you, hey, listen, you play who you play, you get the dub. That's the only thing that matters. But you still kind of pull back to the artichoke and you say, okay, well, why was it that, the Seattle Seahawks were not able to put up more points on a Colts defense that you're saying, okay, well, there's no Sauce Gardner, roaming the backfield. That is something that's going to come into question because you're not going to be able to play the Rams again, especially after, losing in a tight game against the Rams and think that, hey, you're going to have a repeat performance of the same thing again. I mean, the Rams have bigger goals ahead of them. They're trying to get to the Super Bowl and you happen to be in their way. So that game is going to be very interesting for sure. And that's going to be one of those must-watch games over the weekend.
Without a doubt, they're keeping pace in the NFC. Just to sort of round out the conference here, the Bears and the Eagles get convincing wins over two of the worst teams in the league. The Bears straight up punked the Philadelphia Eagles just 2 weeks ago. how much of an edge, or rather, how much do those two teams factor in when we talk about the likes of the let's include the whole NFC West, because we need to mention the 10-win 49ers along with those Rams and the Seahawks.
Well, it's very interesting because obviously, if you were to put it in some kind of sequential order, you're going to start with the Rams first, or at least you should start with the Rams, and then after
Right.
that,
Yeah, the only
then
team with 11 wins.
Exactly. Then you can say, okay,
Well,
well,
Seattle has 11 too. That's my bad.
right. So now you could put Seattle up there. And then right after Seattle, I would dare say, there you go, the Bears. Then after the Bears, I would think San Francisco. And then I would go with the Philadelphia Eagles, because what I'm looking for is a rate of consistency. And looking at everything that has happened with the San Francisco 49ers, even though I don't think that they're equipped to win a Super Bowl, but I just look at the fact that what they have done, talk about doing more with less, having guys that are beat up, still finding ways to win games. They were winning games with Mac Jones and without Brock Purdy. And then now we see that Brandon Ayuk wasn't even coming around to the facility, that they decided to kind of really push him to IR. So San Francisco has done a great job. Philadelphia, we don't really know, or at least I don't, because they're so up and down. And I love what I'm seeing from the Bears. There's a little fight there. There's a little excitement, right? You're very intrigued when you watch the Bears, because it's like, okay, well, what kind of throw will Caleb Williams make? Because that throw he made, rolling to his right and just throwing off his back foot. And I have no idea how the Cleveland Browns DBs did not make a play on the ball and allow DJ Moore to come down. But sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. And that's kind of where we see the Bears at this moment.
Without a doubt, we learned very quickly, because just 2 weeks ago, that close game with the Packers, they get the rematch, this time at home. And even better, they go on the road to Santa Clara and they play the 49ers the following week. So the Bears, I think, by and large, had the toughest schedule the rest of the way. Packers at Niners, home against the Lions. Although you could also argue, given that San Francisco gets the Seahawks at home to close out the rest of the year, it's anybody's guess as to how the rest of that NFC shakes out. The Eagles, meanwhile, at Commanders, at Bills, home against the Commanders. So I'm not so worried for the rest of their schedule than I am maybe those other teams in the NFC. He's Nick Ferguson, 10 years in the National Football League. I'm Alex Hardy. Those guys, you can get us wherever you get your podcast, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube, if you want to take a look at us as we continue to cover the NFL season, getting to the home stretch here. Nick, how's the holiday preparations been with the fam? I mean, we're closing in just about a little over a week here for Christmas, and I know, look, I'm going to hit you again. You've got your baking recipes. You've got everything that you need to leave the cookies out for Santa, right?
Man, look, I don't bake, man. You talking to the wrong person, man.
I gave you the opportunity to bake since we last spoke, and you're not going to take me up on that.
No, I'm not. I mean, listen, the whole thing about being an athlete, you have to know your strengths and your weaknesses. That's not my weakness. My strength is eating the cookies, not baking the cookies. So the idea is, if you leave them out for Santa, you better leave a bunch out, because Santa may come and it's got that plate's going to be light, very light.
Santa, that's on you for coming so late. I've been here at this party.
I've been here. It's not my fault, right?
I'm allowed to get seconds if you didn't show up yet, Santa.
Exactly. He's liable to come and he gets coal instead of cookies if he's too late. So yeah.
Fair enough. All right, Nick, let's head on out of here. What do you have to say to the people?
Hey, make sure if you are giving gifts this holiday, don't give people them damn fruitcakes. No one wants a goddamn fruitcake, so keep it.
Nick, you got to bake for him. I'm telling you.
No, I'm not going to do it.